snowy night, so I was hoping the weather would be a little more cooperative, but I'm going to announce again we have free light bulbs. Please help yourself. You can pick them up now or later. I'm going to do some introductions because we're going to kind of share the presentation tonight. I'm Sue McLaughlin, I'm the city manager here, and the people that have joined me this evening, I feel bad they got to drive home. They are from the Illinois Municipal Electrical Agency, electricity. So we have Mike Jennen, we have Stacy, thank you, I'm so used to just call her Stacy, and Kevin Maiden. And so they've driven out here from Springfield to try to help provide more of the background for me. I will get into a little bit more of the local billing and whatnot, so please bear with us. Hopefully everybody can see that. I don't have a microphone, but hopefully you'll be able to hear us all. So we're going to let Stacy kick it off, and I'm going to sit here. Hopefully my head won't be in the way to forward the PowerPoint.
Great. I appreciate letting us kind of give a little bit of background on IMEA and kind of why we're here and what we're talking about today. IMEA is a Illinois Municipal Electric Agency. It's a non-profit joint action agency. It was established in 1984, where municipalities that own their own electric systems went to the legislature and asked for the authority to have a joint action agency. So they found that their voices were stronger together rather than individually. And so they combined 32 municipalities over the years and combined together. These are all municipalities similar to yours that own their own local electric distribution system. So each municipality, like I said, initially came together to try to share costs, provide mutual support, and essentially we're like a cooperative in many ways, sharing aggregate load and investing in long-term assets and investments to supply. We supply the energy, the power to your distribution system. Next slide. We, as I mentioned, we supply the power, and we do that through a mix of different types of generating sources. We do have a new, the top-of-the-line emission control coal-fired plant down in southern Illinois. That's part of that. We also have some power supply agreements that will expire in a few years with Vistra Energy, which is used to, you might know it more as Dynegy. It's just recently been acquired by Vistra, so that's why I mentioned that. And then we have been making progress investing in renewable generation as well. We have 2 solar facilities up, and we're getting ready to put up 3 more solar facilities. We've invested in some wind, and then we also purchase off the market as necessary and as needed to kind of try to, basically the goal is to have a diversified portfolio in order to keep your costs low and keep your power supply reliable as well. You know, so that on days like today when it's really cold, you're getting the power you need to make sure that we have heat or air or whatever the weather might be at the time. We at IMEA, really we're the kind of the management side of that power, we're the power company in many ways, and we have a board of directors that is made up of each municipal, so there's 32 people on our directors, and each of the towns have their own board member, and so I'm a board member for IMEA right now from your particular municipality. And they are a true governing board in that they direct us, staff, and our CEO as to what we need to do. And then we provide all types of professional utility assistance. So NERC is compliance that many of the municipalities have to do, dealing with security, reliability, that type of thing, cybersecurity, all that stuff. We provide all that back-end compliance parts. We have the energy efficiency program. One of the pieces of that program you see right there in the fact that there are LED light bulbs available for people to help try to bring down some of your efficiencies in your homes. That's just one piece of the entire efficiency program. There's a host of other parts too. We provide mutual aid for when if you had like a tornado come through or a major problem in town, there's mutual aid of other towns available if it's necessary if it's a real crisis point. And then we do safety training for all of the linemen and necessary training that they are able to be up to speed and doing everything properly and safely. And then we have the 24-hour, 7-day-a-week operations center where as your lines, your larger transmission lines feed into town, those are the Ameren lines before they get to your city gate. So we, in that operations center, we facilitate if the line problem is on the Ameren side or on your side, we facilitate the communication. I don't want to get into a lot of detail there, but we try to make sure that the right people are fixing the right lines at the right time. So that kind of gives you a basic there. So Kevin has the next couple slides.
Thanks, Stacy. Well, one of the things that, again, my name is Kevin Gayton. I'm the president and CEO of IMEA. I have been here for about 7 years. I'm in my 32nd year being in the power supply business. I was born and raised in central Nebraska. You can throw rocks and bottles at me. Yes, I'm a Nebraska guy, a Cornhusker guy. So I've been here for 7 years as the CEO here. And what I've done in my entire career is work for local governments that own and operate their utility system. And actually, as I sit here tonight, I see one of my current board members and 2 of my prior board members at IMEA. So I appreciate that background, that support. From a local generation standpoint, one of the things that makes Farmers City a little bit unique compared to many cities throughout not only this part of the Midwest, but as part of the country, in our membership there are 20 of our cities that own and operate a power plant that we call behind the meter. So it's inside the city. And it doesn't happen very often, but from time to time, what I call the tie line, Rick and Larry know what I'm talking about. When the tie line, you're actually served on the Ameren lines from the north up by the interstate, and it comes down into town. From time to time, that will go out of service. And at some point in time, when that goes out of service, especially on a night like tonight, people are expecting those lights to come back on. And looking at Rick, I know he spent a lot of time making sure that happened on a regular basis for many, many years to be able to have that happen. And so, as part of that, as part of you owning and operating that power plant, our organization leases that output from you. So we're a renter of the output of that power plant. We credit you about $240,000, $250,000 a year to have that unit available if we need it in a peaking situation. A peaking situation would be the hottest summer days or the coldest winter nights, and this would be one of those nights. Although we have, our generators are running very well right now, we don't have that need to be able to operate that power plant. But the other thing that we talked about is with regard to if that tie line or that service from Ameren goes down, you have the unique capability of being able to start that generator, and what happens then is we continue to make that lease payment to you, and the fuel that you use to burn to operate that power plant, we reimburse you as a city to operate that power plant. And so that may seem like something that, well, that all sounds well and good, but how much does that really happen? Well, I'll give you an example of a couple of our communities yesterday morning. At 4:45 in the morning, their tie line from Ameren went down. And at an hour and 15 minutes later, as Stacy was saying, our dispatchers in Springfield were contacting Ameren. An hour and 15 minutes later, their folks were still en route trying to figure out where they were supposed to be going. 3 hours and 15 minutes later, they found the problem. A couple of poles had gone down, caused some wires to break, and they were restoring the service. So 3 hours and 15 minutes later, the service was restored back to the community. In my community, this happens to be down in the East Metro area of St. Louis, their customers had been out for 20 minutes. Well, from 4:45 in the morning to 5:05 in the morning, maybe a few of you were up at that point in time, but probably not all of you were up at that point in time to even recognize that the power was out. And so that's a real big benefit that it provides Farmers City for that backup and reliability. It also can act as an economic development tool for you to show that when it comes to new customers, industries, things that you're looking to do on the interstate, making sure that there's power there all the time, almost no matter what. There's going to be power to serve whatever those customers are, whatever their needs are. You've come to expect that when the lights go off, you don't expect them to be off for very long. Mike happened to grow up in Belleville, Illinois, and what was it about, not this past summer, but the summer before that, had a big windstorm down in St. Louis metro area. Some of the people in that neighborhood were out for 8 days. My kids are hacked off when it's out for 8 minutes. Can you imagine 8 days being there with no power on? So having that power plant is very key. From having that power plant, having that available there is very important. Again, as I say, that tie line goes down, and this is just kind of a little schematic there that'll kind of show you how that generally works. But again, it's a second contingency unless that line goes down. The other thing that we have to keep in mind is with regard to, let's say you have a windstorm, and at first, all we see is that connection between the Ameren line that comes in and the meter that the city has. We see there's no voltage on that line anymore. So, and Larry and Rick know exactly what happens then. We pick up the phone and say, hey guys, you realize that you have no power there? I see you in the back row too. Hey, how you doing? We realize there's no power there. And they say, sure enough, the power's out. But what your crews have to do is they have to go out and figure out, we're going to double check to see if Ameren, to see if they've dropped voltage on their side of the line. Sometimes they're scrambling around trying to figure out, I've dropped this one, I've dropped this one. They're trying to sectionalize where that problem is. In our case, if they think that's energized, the first thing that the crew's got to do, Wally and his crews have got to do, is they got to check that there's not a tree in a line that's caused a local outage. Because probably one of the worst things we could do is if there's a problem, whether it's on the Ameren system or it's on the city system, and there's a tree that falls into a line, or invariably a drunk runs into a power pole and knocks down the power pole, what you don't want to do is re-energize that line while it's laying on the ground, which causes a gigantic safety problem. So the first thing that the crews need to do is verify that it is indeed safe to operate the distribution system. And it truly is just a delivery problem. Once they've cleared that, it gives them a capability of starting that generator to be able to serve that. You can see here over this last couple of summers, you have a peak load of about 4,600 kilowatts. In our business, we call that 4.6 megawatts of peak demand. We have, our system as a whole is about 950 to 970 megawatts. So it gives you some kind of sense for that. You have the generating capability of about 6,200 kilowatts. So you have opportunities for growth in your system that can still run your entire town. Even if you had a bunch of new customers, you could still have enough peak demand here to run that in an emergency condition. In some cases that could be for a day, it could be for 2 hours, it could be a day, it could be for 8 days. You just never know. Again, if that generator needs to be operated, we reimburse you for that fuel. So then I'm going to turn it over to Mike Jenin. He's our Vice President of Member Services to talk a little bit about some of the benefits of owning and operating your own electric system. Thank you.
Yeah, I've been in the industry about 35 years. I've spent almost 11 with Illinois Power, worked out of Champaign, and was working when they were building the Clinton Nuclear Station, gave tours out there, different things like that. And with the IMEA going on 24 years now. As Kevin said, you guys are basically getting a premium utility service by having the local generation backup. It's something that investor-owned utilities do not provide. They will not put generation in the town to back up a town. So you're getting an extra higher level of service. The other extra higher level of service you're getting is you've got locally based crews. If an investor-owned utility, the ones in Illinois, they're great utilities, but they would probably not put any crews in your town. They would probably serve you out of either Champaign, Decatur, or Bloomington. They used to have an office in Clinton. I don't know if they still have an office in Clinton. If that's still open, they probably serve you out of there. I don't think they have the office in Monticello anymore, but that's what they're doing. They're out there. They're trying to serve their stockholders, their customers, and they make more money if they regionally base their crews, regionally base their call centers. You have people in town that are getting paid, and they're generally living in the towns. They're spending their money in your towns, so they're going to gas stations, they're going to the restaurants, they're going to EMOs, things like that. When you call in and you say you've got a problem, they generally know who lives at what address, and you're talking to someone locally downtown. They probably know who's living in your house, actually. We had one of our towns that had a census issue, and they knew they were undercounting by 400, and the 3 ladies in the office took a map out and they counted everybody in the buildings, because they knew how many people were living in the building. If you work with investor-owned utilities, we had customers call us and say, I call the investor-owned utility and they say, I'm living in a town like Farmer City, where they might have a couple customers that aren't from the city. And the investor-owned utility goes, we don't serve your town, call the municipal or whatever. So a lot of them don't know where you are. You're getting a premium service there. You're getting crews who, when they get the phone call at 17 Cherry Street's got an outage, they probably know exactly where 17 Cherry Street is. They know what service is there. They can load stuff up and they know what's going on. We get, the towns near us are served on the weekends a half hour away. So if there's an outage, if they got a local guy with a pickup truck or something like that, goes out, looks and says, oh, I got an outage here. He calls in and says, I need a transformer, I need a pole, I need this, unless he can fix it by himself. Then they call 30 minutes away, and those guys load up the trucks. They got 30 minutes to drive, set up, and work. Unless it's a weekend or a holiday, like 4th of July, then they're both from an hour away. So they're guaranteed long-term outages. And if you have a night like tonight when it's 8 below zero, and you're out for 4 hours, you're going to know it. I mean, it's going to get cold. You're going to have your stuff in your freezer won't thaw because it'll be so cold. But I have a house and I had a sump pump go out for 4 hours. I almost had a flooded basement. People that do business anymore with the computers, they can't. There's no cash registers there. They need to have the electricity flowing. Otherwise, they're in deep trouble. They can't issue receipts. They can't pump gasoline, or whatever. I mean, it's a big deal. You have the grain trucks backed up 4 deep into your grain elevators, and there's no electricity. Time is money. You got real issues. We talk security systems go offline, lost business production. Healthcare, if you got a lot of elderly people, if you have long-term outages, you're not producing oxygen, you're not running medical equipment, it's a real big issue. You've got local generation, local crews, so your reliability is going to be a lot better than it would have been at a lot of places in the state. The other thing you can do is you have a city council, and you've got local elected officials, and you've got local supervisors. You can decide your own destiny on what you want to do. Like right now, you guys are extending utility service to the other side of the interstate. Investor-owned utilities wouldn't necessarily do that on the comm. They want a customer there. They want a guaranteed customer, someone who's going to put a deposit down, things like that. You guys can set your destiny, because companies that are looking for new locations, if you got the utilities in place, that takes out one factor that there's going to be delays, and they don't like delays. So if the guy says his goal is he gets bonuses if he's got so many stores up per year, he's going to go to the places where they've got less risk of not meeting that schedule. The other things you can do is you can develop economic development rates. We provide economic development rates. You guys can provide your own economic development rates through us or design your own rates. So if you got a customer who comes in and says, I need electricity at a certain price, you can run the math and say, yeah, we'll give it to you for a certain number of years. If you're at different areas of the state, you basically, whatever the market can bear, whatever the people can charge you, they'll go with it. And the people selling the power don't really care if they're in your town. They're just as happy if they go to Champaign, if they go to another place, because they're not linked to you. The whole process is people involved in your utility are linked to your town, to your neighbors, to people making the decisions, or your elected officials they're accountable to. The other thing, different policies like cutoffs, different things like that. The state, they set one blanket policy for the state and everybody follows it. You guys have special considerations, so you can say, well, we think that's, some bad things happen in town. We're basically going to, as a council, vote to change the policies on cutoffs. You can do policy, you can change rates, you can do deposits, termination of services. You guys control your own destiny, and as long as it's not arbitrary and capricious, as a judge would say, as long as you're being fair to everybody involved in the law, you pretty much can do a lot of the set your own destiny.
My turn. So I just wanted to talk to you about the future of our plant and what's going on more at the local level now. We have lost employees to other providers such as Ameren because we can't pay $50 an hour. That's sometimes the starting rate, depending. Although we are starting to adjust our wages because there's no way to compete. I literally had to advertise 3 times trying to find a second lineman for our plant. It ended up adding 50% to our wage, and it's still not even close to what Ameren is paying. So I know that that's going to be a continuing trend, that we're going to have to continue to offer higher wages as well as increase them from where we are. We're facing some more succession planning. We have our operator who's looking to retire in the next 12 to 18 months. We're looking to try to save money, maybe looking at a hybrid position where they would be an operator and maybe have some lineman experience. We don't know if we're going to have success at that. If we don't, we're still going to have to pay a higher wage probably to be able to recruit someone for that position. And then we need another lineman. Right now we have 2 linemen, thankfully, but we really need a 3rd because we haven't been able to do the work that needs to be done because of vacations and illnesses. I think you guys probably know that we had to call in mutual aid this last summer. I think one time summer and one time it was like in November. That's for the bigger, projects where you need a couple of different crews. But on a day-to-day basis, like let's say pole breaks or not last night, but the night before, several houses were out at 1 o'clock in the morning. So we had our 2 linemen go out there and handle that. But let's say one of them was, in the Bahamas. We would have had to call mutual aid. They would have been off a lot longer. So we really need a 3rd lineman. Again, you're looking at probably a minimum of $30 to $35 an hour to try to get somebody. So it's been very difficult. Because we're competing and it's hard to compete. We've changed too, even though they're still more local than living in Champaign. The desire to get them to be within a certain mileage or time distance from Farmer City is difficult as well.
So if I can add to that just briefly, if you know young people that are good with their hands and they have a willingness to work and learn this trade, there is going to be humongous amounts of growth. We are just one facet of the energy business that's struggling to continue to get the technical expertise to do it. Ameren has the same problem we have. The co-ops have the same problem we have. All the investor-owned utilities have the same problem. A statistic to keep in mind is that 50% of the electric utility operations people today are eligible, in the entire country, are eligible for retirement in 5 years or less. 50%. So not every kid wants to go be a design video games. There are some kids out there that are good with their hands, they know how to do it, and if you have any interest, if you know anybody has any interest in that, please let us know. They may not work at Farmer City, they may not work at one of my towns, but we'd be happy to help them go down that road to be looking at those opportunities. Same is true with people like from a welding standpoint. If you know a kid or a guy that knows how to weld, there's some real big opportunities in the energy business on that side as well. So that's my commercial for trying to encourage young people to get into the trades, because we are sadly lacking in young people getting into these hard trades, that are hard, physical trades. That's part of the problem that we're having.
Something else as an advantage too is, let me give you an example. The lineman that we just hired moved to town, and he's looking to put roots here, and that's the next generation, and we want to encourage that. So the fact that yes, we have to pay them a little more, but I mean that's the future. So that's what we want to bring here, and we want to encourage them to stay here, live here, work here. So that's another benefit. This was the last time we had to go out in the middle of the night. We're all sleeping soundly in our beds, and this is the work they do, but this is why they also get paid a lot of money. But it's also local, and I think it's like the other night. We're able to get it back on sooner than if we were with Ameren.
How many have all been zapped by 120 volts? Before? Yeah, I know you have. So if you've been zapped by 120 volts, it wakes you up pretty quickly and says, I better not do that again. That line there's got 12,000 volts on it. And you ain't gonna just bounce off of that one. So you better know what you're doing. Right, Wally?
That's right.
One of the things the council asked me to do was to try to explain the bill, because I did a little bit, I think it was a few months ago, I put a little blurb on the utility bill about what the energy cost adjustment was. But there's 3 lines on your bill for electric. One is your rate. That's, you'll find your actual usage. So 1,000, like right now, a lot of people probably had close to 1,000 back in December because it was closed. Times our rate. That rate has not changed since 2012. That covers the cost of your usage, and then any future planning that we need to do, whether it's, you know, whatever we plan to do. I'm sorry?
Going to the interstate.
Yeah, going on the interstate, which then will bring money to the town. The next line is the EL base. That's your monthly charge, $15 a month. That covers, you know, your meter and your billing, the infrastructure. That's your poles, your lines. We've been changing out to all radio read meters so that it's more efficient for us and more accurate. We also, obviously, it costs money for us to send the bills out, to collect the money. And then the last line is here, it'll say ECA, Energy Cost Adjustment. That changes every month. The easiest way to describe it is we're paying a set amount for the energy. Each month it changes because maybe the cost of oil changes, the cost of coal changes, or whatever it may be. That changes every month, just like your gas prices change. So every time it changes, there's a difference between the set amount and what that changes. And that's what your energy cost adjustment is that difference, to make up that difference. So one of the things, we did do an analysis, just so I want to pass on this information. We looked at several scenarios about, you know, do we want to look at rates, do we want to look at abatements, those kinds of things. And with the things that we just laid out, we can't afford it. It would be a huge loss, it would be too much loss of money. But one of the things we do have that I noticed out of this entire town, we only have less than 20 people using it. And it's budget billing, and it may help depending on your circumstances. The biggest thing is that it's a 12-month program, so you have to have lived at your address for at least 12 months so we can get an estimate of what an average would be. So it takes the average, and then you pay the same amount every month, no matter what. Now, the hook is that you have to be careful because some people end up owing money at the end of the year because they've used too much. But there's also the possibility that you'll get a credit because you haven't used as much as we estimated. The other things are that it's, you know, I'm going to walk through these. You can't be late. So you know, if you think there may be issues, maybe you're facing a job loss or a layoff or whatever it may be, and you think you may have trouble, we don't allow late payments. So let's say you're on budget billing and you can't make the payment for a couple of weeks or a week late, that would end your budget billing. But I brought some sheets. All the information is on here. If you're interested, it may help you kind of spread the wealth or spread the cost, however you want to look at it, to try to make things a little easier between, you know, the hottest days of the year and the coldest days of the year. So it is something that we do offer. I don't know if I had, yeah, sign up is later this, you know, it's in September, so that gives you a little time to think about it. You could also call City Hall. We could run an average, if you've been there at least a year or even 6 months, tell you what it's looking like. You know, kind of maybe try to give you an estimate of what it might look like. That gives you a little time to think about it because the sign up is in the fall. So I think that was it. Am I doing the summary? Do you want to do the summary?
Yeah, well, let's do it together.
Okay.
Again, the City of Farmer City is a non-profit utility. So just like the city itself is a non-profit entity, whenever dollars go out, got to be paid for some way through whether that's electric rates, water rates, sewer rates, tax rates, whatever the case is. And so that's, again, everything that's done your board of directors for your electric and water and sewer utility is the city council. And so if you have questions about, if you have something, if you have comments or input to give, Sue and her staff are there every day. City council members are the board of directors for Farmer City. It's all done on a nonprofit basis, just like all of the 32 cities that we serve. There are 43 cities in the state that are municipally owned utilities, the largest of which are like Naperville and Springfield, is actually it's a city-owned utility as well. From a Farmer City standpoint, some of the things like Sue was talking about was trying to make sure there's enough funds to not only maintain the reliability that you have today, to maintain the power plant that you have, make sure you have enough staff to be able to manage that and maintain. It's a pretty complex set of machines down there to be able to handle. And then also to build out to the interstate, to have that infrastructure there and that duplicate service to make sure that when you get, whether it's a truck stop and a hotel or whatever the case is, or other businesses that are out there that help can bring in those tax revenues, those sales tax revenues to the city, plus the utility revenues to the city, that helps spread those fixed costs off across more units, so then that average cost per unit comes down. Everybody benefits from that. We see some of those same types of things by the size and complexity of IMEA. Because we have 32 cities, if Farmer City's peaking one day, maybe Bethany or Bushnell or Breeze is not that day. So we get that diversity that's out of there as well. Plus you have, as we talked about, an engaged workforce. I mean, I know these folks that have been working here, and Mike pointed it out clearly that there's a distinct difference when somebody says, we've got a power outage at 123 Main Street. These guys don't just have to guess what's going on at 123 Main Street. They probably know the person that's there. They know what kind of medical condition that may be there that may cause somebody to get it done, taken care of quickly. They also know, before I go there, I need to put something in the back of my pickup because it's probably the crossarm that I thought was going to go out finally has gone out, or something to that extent. By knowing the operations and the little nooks and crannies inside the distribution system here, it's also true about the water system and the sewer system and the streets and all those other things. And these guys back here know exactly what I'm talking about. They know exactly which thing's likely to fail in each neighborhood and what types of pieces and parts do they need to have to fix it. And again, I can't emphasize this enough. If you have never been in a home that's had power out for a day or two at a time, pardon me? A couple weeks. That'll get everybody on edge fairly quickly, won't it? And so again, in our society, I think everything's fine so long as the house is not too hot or too cold and the cell phones are charged up. Because that kind of keeps everybody out of the midst, and they can figure out how to do things until that all goes to heck in a handbasket, and then people start getting a little antsy. What some of the things that Sue was talking about earlier is extending that those distribution lines to the interstate. I think that's a great opportunity for the city to be able to take advantage of some of that traffic patterns, get people in and out of the city here, being able to utilize some of your businesses. Plus, then, as I said before, the revenues, the tax growth, and all those other things, plus the property tax growth. And then also trying to work with you all to offer some convenient payment options. So that's what we wanted to really talk about tonight, some of the things that we think are going on in Farmer City, and happy to answer any questions. Yeah.
How do you propose, Sue, how they're going to take the utilities across the interstate?
How are they?
Yeah, where?
Okay, well, the electric's being extended by, we're just paying as we go.
I mean, what route?
Route. It's going to go from near the end of Richardson Street, then across just west of where the ramps are.
Okay, why not come in by north of the interstate and come down?
Because that would be too far from the southeast corner of where we want to be. Because you have to go across and then all the way back down.
What about cost?
I'm sorry?
What about the cost?
What about it?
Which is going to be higher.
Which, well, I
It'd be
didn't
cheaper
pay an
to come-
engineer
it'd
to
be cheaper
determine what
come
was.
from us,
Well, no, because see, we're gonna bore under the interstate.
And boring's
For water,
expensive.
I know, but it's all three are gonna be done at the same
Why
time.
not go where the railroad goes under?
Railroad.
Come right out here. Right north of the.
The railroad goes right under the interstate. You can go right beside the railroad.
I could,
Oh, because that's way far west.
well, I could tell you from some of my own personal experience with the railroads. This railroad-owned land is very, very difficult to be able to get access rights to.
I know.
And so when, just dealing with trying to get access to put a power line across, across a regular railroad track, it's really expensive because then they're going to take you for all the potential downtime, even though there may not be a train that comes at
I
all.
dealt with the railroad.
There's
Okay.
also gonna be some improvements at the power plant that extends down Richardson. We're also doing improvements for water and sewer down that route as well. So it's all kind of tied together. We talked to the engineers, we had several meetings about where we were gonna go and,
Did you ever find the line that was put under the interstate?
yeah, it's too small.
Pardon?
It's too small.
Too small.
Okay, what
They
you
found
found
it.
easier to bore either over here or out here under the big end?
No, that's my point, is because we're going to be enlarging and improving from the power plant down Allen and down Richardson and along there, it makes sense to improve that as well as go across for all
So,
three.
will you bore ahead of the off ramps and on ramps, or will you have to bore 3 holes?
I don't have the map in front of me, but no, it's not 3 holes, no. It'll be one, and I think it's right at the end of the on-ramp, off-ramp.
Okay.
I'm imagining what you're going to do is put a duct bank in that goes basically all the way through there, that has the capability of carrying all 3 of the utilities in it.
Yes.
And what's that going to cost? Just the boring?
Oh, we don't have that breakdown. I mean, the engineers might.
I know they've had the prices because I've been involved.
Well, I know, but they had to be updated, and I don't have that in front of me. You can call me
Okay,
tomorrow, I'll get
one
it.
other question. The money coming in from the farmland, the rent,
Okay,
where's that going?
in the general fund.
In general fund?
Yes.
That's not being used, that's not being set aside to be used to put utilities across there.
No,
Why?
because our general fund is dying, because we need as much money in the general fund as we can get.
In other
And
words, you
utilities
take it
are
there,
separate from the
you-
general
You can put
fund.
it in the general fund, use it wherever you take an ocean,
Sure,
pretty much.
sure.
So, instead of using that, put
The
utilities.
utilities are standalone. They don't mix, you can't mix the two.
Hmm?
So the utilities are standalone, you can't mix the two. So the
How do we
utilities
go
need to pay
standalone?
for themselves
How much
and
mo-
pay
how
for their
much-
expansion.
How much money is owed to the utility fund?
How much is owed?
Owed.
Owed?
How much, yeah, how much is owed to the utility fund? It's been borrowed from for years and never been paid back.
I
And
don't
that is
have
all
any record
supposed
of
to be
that.
paid back being small.
Well, you'd have to talk to the council, I don't have any
No,
record of that.
no. You're the city manager.
No, I've been here a year and a half. If you're talking
Whatever.
about years
I'm
ago,
under
then
answer.
show me the paperwork.
Hmm?
Show me the paperwork.
You know, we set up several years ago when the TIF 2 was organized. That money was supposed to be paid, it has to be paid back before the TIF ends. That's law. Has it been?
I'm not aware of what you're speaking of.
And you're talking a new TIF? They're gonna borrow money from the power plant for that?
No, the TIF is a standalone.
Hmm?
Why would we borrow money from the power plant? for the
Because
TIF?
it's been used for a loan fund for years.
Well, sure,
You
that's
got,
a
you
benefit.
got a buffer in the power plant.
It's a benefit.
So instead of saving that for using the power plant, they loan it out to something else, and then they
We are
don't pay
using
it
it
back.
for the power
It's like they
plant.
did, it's like they screwed social security. Let's say it's the same deal.
Well, would you
Borrow-
rather, okay, how about this? Would you rather us borrow from ourselves or increase your property taxes
I
to pay for
I
it?
think borrowing from ourselves is great,
Then
if you
what's
pay it
wrong?
back.
Well,
If you don't pay it back, it ain't worth a damn.
I'm not aware of what you're
I
referring
am.
to. Well, if you could show me the
Well,
paperwork.
you need to look into it.
Well, that's ultimately something that, again, as the board of directors, for the city is the city council.
And they know this, they've
Yeah.
all heard it before.
So it's just a matter, again, so
See, she's in the blind, because they've not told her.
I guess what I would say is something you could follow up with.
Sure, I can look
If you've
into
got
it.
additional questions about those
I mean,
details.
it's been going on for years.
Part of the problem, I will tell you, let's say that I saw the paperwork right now that said we're supposed to pay it back. I don't know where I'm gonna pay it back from. Our
You should have
EAD just went down. I just lost another $20,000 in the general
That should
fund.
have been thought of before they ever brought it.
I understand, but I'm dealing with today. I don't have the money
But
to
don't
pay
do
it
it,
back.
what I'm getting
Even if I
at
had
is
to.
don't do it again. That's what I'm getting at.
That's why I'm not doing that with the
But
extension.
they're talking about another tip. And you just said that's probably where they get the money for.
No,
Yes, you did.
not for the extension, I did not. The electric's gonna pay for the electric, and the water and sewer are gonna pay for the water and sewer.
I asked you if they start another tip, where do you get the money to start the tip?
You
And
said it covered
probably
electric,
from the-
no.
You
said it.
agreed with me.
No.
The hell you did.
Let's replay the tape.
The hell you did.
Let's replay the tape.
I mean, they've had more chances to put power across their,
I'm curious,
Sorry, go ahead.
if IME represents 32 different municipalities, I'm curious about how the rates here in Farmer City compare to other municipalities. Do you have data or information that you could share on that?
They're pretty close. They're on the higher end of the group, but they're all in a fairly tight bunch. I have heard, again, I've been doing this for such a long time, invariably I hear somebody say, my brother-in-law that lives in X pays 4 cents a kilowatt hour. No, your brother-in-law that lives in X doesn't pay 4 cents a kilowatt hour. I just know that because the actual delivery charge is more than 4 cents a kilowatt hour. But Farmer City right now is on the upper edge of the actual retail rate. But again, as Sue said, they've been very stable for that period of time. And to some degree, having the healthy enterprise fund in the electric department has really helped you do a lot of things in a lot of other areas.
I have no problem with IMDA. I dealt with it before, it's good, work out real well, problems happen, right?
And again, I think that's what...
And you can't control it.
I understand. Yeah. And I guess I think what Sue's trying to get at is that...
What I'm trying to get out is how the money's been screwed with our power plant for years.
And
That's been done.
clearly-
I know you've only been here a year, but it's been done. And it'll be done again.
Well, I hope not, but I think your
Well, I
point
would
is well
rather,
taken.
quite frankly, you're right. I mean, we have to be sure that if we did borrow it, that we pay it back. But I'd rather borrow from myself than raise property taxes or pay a bank interest, so.
The law requires that money be paid back to the
Right.
power company. And it hasn't.
I guess as I was scratching notes down, what I picked up on is a lot of discussion about premium service. And so I'm in business here in town, significant utility user, in my estimation anyway. I pay the bill, it feels like. So again, when I hear premium, I want to have the opportunity to evaluate what value is that bringing? How many days, what am I getting for that? How much am I paying for that premium service? Is there any way to quantify that?
Well, out of curiosity, when you say you're a large utility customer, what is...
I should have brought the bill with me, I didn't.
Well, what's your business?
I'm in the countertop manufacturing business.
Okay, so you're running I'll say a medium industrial facility.
Yeah, in a normal scale, if you're evaluating versus big municipalities, I'm quite small.
No, I
We got
understand.
40 employees.
I understand
We're
what you're
running a couple CNC machines, several dust collectors. and-
You're a busy guy. I'm not discounting that at all. You got 40 employees and you're doing those things. What I would say to that is, from my perspective, when you go to work every day, the one thing you don't generally think about is whether or not I'm going to have enough power to run my equipment so that my 40 employees are getting things done and as productive as they possibly can be. And so we've got other communities and again, we don't keep track of the reliability statistics. The electric guys remember all the KD, SAIDI, all of those electric reliability statistics. I will say that I'm pretty comfortable that if I went back and did all the specific research of how many times the lights were out, how long they were out, how many customers it affected, those statistics are fairly small compared to an average customer in a larger community or a larger investor-owned system. And that's...
And I don't doubt that. I mean, our disruption of power is almost immeasurable. I mean, we just don't have much of it. But the key is, what are we paying for that? So
Right.
if I were going to be out for 2 days, how much across the entire year did it cost me to get that versus what would it cost me to recover that work? So I'm just trying to understand on balance when I'm looking at slides that lead me to believe we're going to have to do some significant reinvestment in power utilities to run power over to an interstate. How's that going to affect me?
I mean, based on...
I think it's only about 600,000.
Based on what I'm anticipating is I don't think that that's going to draw, it's going to require an immense rate
No,
increase.
we're not even going to issue a bond
To be able to do
for the
that.
electric car.
It's utilizing the cash flow that they have right now.
Grants for that?
I've looked into some grants, a lot of the grants I did look into, they said that you need a development in place, if that makes sense, and we don't have that. We need to, we don't, like a development in place, like you're extending that electricity for someone
Some of them are
specific.
tied to job creation, so you have to say, I've got 50 full-time
Yeah,
jobs.
job creation.
Things like that. On your question, some of the things that you might want to consider, and I want to tell you, business, some of the investor-owned utilities, it's really complicated to project what your bills are going to be and how your usage is going to impact your future bills. Some of them have what they call demand ratchets. So if you by any chance someone comes in and turns on all your equipment at the same time, like your normal usage is, say, 50 kW. And someone turns on all the equipment and all of a sudden you're at 75 kW, you've got a ratchet and you're paying for that usage and that capacity for the whole next 12 months.
So does IMEA offer services to come in and help us understand those costs and how we manage those?
Yeah, we can definitely.
How do I
do that.
access those?
You have to ask through the city, but for sure.
Give us a business card, and I'm sure you'll see that ugly mug here real quick.
The other thing is like just the question, if you did have these problems and you're behind an investor-owned utility, could you have someone from that investor-owned utility come meet with you on a call like that in like 5 days? They generally don't do that unless there's a health and safety issue.
Sure.
There's a lot of different things you can value. Okay, if you lost the production for so many hours, what do you have in scrap and labor that's not used? You can put a value on that and back that in on your per kilowatt hour and back that in.
Well, and in many ways, I mean, I can relate to a lot of the problems that Sue's talking to in terms of difficulty of acquiring labor and the overhead in terms of a business, which is essentially what she's running. So every business is facing those same things. So managing costs, whether it be electricity or otherwise, is paramount. So I guess I'm always skeptical when I hear about investments that are running out, and I haven't seen the studies on how that pays Farmer City back. I just want to make sure for the businesses that are here and the citizens that are here, we're not going to do something that's going to drive costs continually that's detrimental to the city.
Well, the way I look at it is it's not so much from the utility perspective as it's from the property tax and sales tax perspective, that if we get a development on something for, it will generate that tax revenue that then allows us to keep property taxes low or stable. That will then, feed the general fund so that we can keep the utilities, the electric, water, sewer, that everything kind of will feed and improve us generally.
I guess, again, I'm understanding that utilities, electric is separate entity from the general fund. So what I want to make sure of is that we're not incurring costs to acquire sales tax revenue, and we're going to charge that to the utilities and
No, we're
drive
not
electric
charging
costs.
it, no, we're not.
Let's go back on that. Number one is, we'll reach out to Sue tomorrow, make sure we get the vitals for as far as some of the power bills you've got, what your operations are, and here in the next for a couple of weeks for sure, we'll be back to come see you about coming in and doing an industrial
I've had
audit.
good, I mean, you guys have helped us with the lighting projects. I mean, I'm familiar with IMEA.
Didn't you get a grant?
Yeah, we put LED lights in out of Depot Road.
So we're happy to come out and take a look at those
Yeah,
things.
but I wasn't aware of the service that was described there, so that would be useful.
The other thing, as a matter of fact, I asked Sue when it comes to general fund things, I asked Sue, how much does the city itself collect from the property taxes on an annualized basis?
Yeah, I didn't have that number memorized.
It's a fairly small number.
It is small.
It's a fairly small number, and again, if there's anybody from the
And we just
school,
lost 20 grand.
school
Just-
here, right?
If there's anybody from the school here, and I'm not getting, basically a huge amount of the tax bill, it goes to fund the schools. But at the same time, the amount of money that comes from the property taxes that actually comes to the city is a fairly small amount of money. And so when you factor in the cost of operating the city, you know, whether it's the streets and the parks and the pool and all those other things that come along with that, that in other communities there's only one bucket to pull it out of, and it's the general fund. It's the property tax or the sales tax funds. And that's really all I'm saying with regard. And again, the school has to get its funding from somewhere as well.
Yeah, that's right, 120,000
So
for
and
the
again,
general fund.
in the entire.
And I just lost 20% in EAV this year. So
So-
I've lost almost 20 grand that I don't have anymore. And I don't know where we're gonna get it. That's the general fund, and that, like he said, funds your streets, police.
And I live in Springfield, and if you think the folks at the Capitol are going to take care of the local governments, like making sure that the local tax assessments are even more so, I don't think we should plan on that either.
So it's just like inside business. You have to continually drive to get leaner. So how do you get costs out? How do you reduce labor? How do you multitask? What you were talking about with a lineman and an operator are important functions.
Well, some of the stuff you guys are doing, I mean, control costs, one, you mentioned the wages. Your payroll costs are totally in control. I mean, they're almost way below market. The other thing we talked about, boring into the interstate and going long and going around on a sweep. It may sound like that's the cheapest route, but the longer you go, the more you have to maintain every year. If you go like a dagger right to it, you may pay more up front, but it's going to be a more reliable line because it's shorter and there's less thing, you know, a tornado is not going to, there's less chance of getting hit going on a shorter line than a longer line. And when people look at your site, that's one of the things, if you got a professional site evaluator, it's going to look and go, what kind of exposure do I have for if I lose power? Because, as we say, if you lose power, you're out of business. I mean,
No, that's good.
Yeah, I'm going to change the subject. Okay. The budget billing.
Yes.
We moved here in 2001. The city would never tell anybody that they had budget billing. I found out by chance. And there's a lot of people that do not know that you offer it.
Okay.
And when I asked about it, we had paid late once, so they wouldn't do it for us.
That is the policy right now.
Why?
You can't be late.
But
Well,
once in a year?
The problem is, it's a set amount, and it's the way our system
No, I mean,
works.
to do a budget, I went in to ask to get budget billing.
And because you had a prior one?
Yeah.
We
That
could
would make
maybe
sense.
look at that. I just know that maybe they were basing it, it was in place before I got here, probably basing it on what we had in the past, that there was worry that you would have it again. I don't know, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Here,
I mean,
40, how many years ago did you?
Too
It says
long.
48, and we moved here last, 43, okay, last month. And then, you know, the girl knows, an envelope has 3 light bills in it. Business, line, they're all in one envelope. I put them in there. Okay, I go to the mailbox on the 11th. I didn't sign one of them. I hurried up, went back up to City Hall, put my little signature on that there and handed it to her. I think I'm gonna get a late fee, okay, because she said she'd already done it a half hour before that, all right? I couldn't have budget billing then, because I didn't sign it, in 43 years, look back through it. I haven't paid $1 damn in late fees.
But anyway,
So I would be off of budget billing. I wouldn't
but
be
I just think
eligible.
that if you probably would allow it, you'd probably get more people to get paid on time. The other thing is, you said energy efficient programs. You got a list of what that is and what it offers?
I actually have a link on the website that.
And that's for us residents, not for,
Yeah, there's a bunch of things out there on the internet now. Lots of websites out there. We can get Sue a number of links. Mike's got some handouts of some typical places to go find it. Some of the things, it's just like anything on the internet. Some of the things are truly designed to help you learn more about where your energy use is coming from and what you can do to correct it. Depending on where you're, how you get there, sometimes it's a marketing thing to try to get somebody to sell you something. The one I remember is a guy in California had a way that he's putting it on all the McDonald's in California to cheat the utility company to put something on their meter to make sure that it doesn't measure the thing correctly. Well, that's actually against federal law to do that. And so he's kind of gotten busted by a number of folks to try to do those things. And so there's a lot of stuff out there, and we can get you more and more of those things. And we can, what we see is, if we see something that's really kind of good, and we know it's from people that are doing well and mean well, we'll make sure those things get pushed out. But invariably, when there's always somebody, one person out there trying to do good things, there's two people out there trying to sell something or trying to...
Well, we live in a house that's under, what is it, 1,100, under 1,100 square feet. And our bill will range anywhere from $100 and some dollars to almost $600.
How does your,
You tell me.
you have electric heat, central electric?
We're mostly gas.
Is that the total bill or just the electric part?
This is total bill.
Because that includes water, sewer, and garbage too.
Yeah, but it doesn't change from, nothing changes month to month of what we do in the house. So our water shouldn't change.
Well, okay, but again, not knowing if you have a $700 bill, whether or not $150 or $200 of that is on a water system. And again, I'm just throwing out ideas that, you know, I'll tell you that myself had a, it's kind of strange, but a toilet flush valve flap go haywire. And when we went back to central Nebraska to see Grandma and Grandpa, and my son, bless his heart, I'd like to kill him, said, well, yeah, my buddies and I were down there and I didn't hear that running. Well, we came back after 7 days and that toilet had been running and I had a $400 water bill from that. And so it doesn't take, that's water thing, and we're not talking about electric. What I would say is, if you're living in an 1,100 square foot house and you're watching TV, got lights on, got electric stove, electric washer and dryer, and all those other things, it's not very likely that your power side of this is going to be in the $400 or $500 range. There's got to be something else.
Unless your house isn't insulated correctly, or people sometimes forget about like old appliances. They think, well, my refrigerator's not that old. Well, if it's not the new energy efficient, it might only be 10, 15 years old.
But what I think is strange, we can have, say, in July, $200. Of course, we know August is hotter, but 500. Yeah, here you never know.
You're right.
But the next month's 500. Then the next month is 200.
But it's also
too
a
much
month
of a day.
behind. Some people forget that.
Yeah, but
Well,
it's
it's not
too
that
much
hot.
up
Well,
and
it was
down.
hot last month.
I mean, we're talking within $100 or more every month different, and it shouldn't be that much different fluctuation.
Well, we can look at the usage. There's something going on.
If you give her permission, I can look at your usage.
The numbers are right there.
Go right ahead.
But some of the things that you look at when the bills are weird is, you look at the number of days between meter readings.
I know that makes a difference.
Yeah, because I mean, if you got 3 extra days on a meter reading, that's 10% right there. But look at it's kind of like you had a car. You go, you say, everybody here has a car that holds 10 gallons of gas. And so you go to the gas station, fill it up, 10 gallons, 50 gallons. You go, 10 gallons, 10 gallons, 10 gallons. He's using
Got a big
50
pickup.
gallons. You got to go, why is he using so much? So you should, the typical person is going to be using about 800 kilowatt hours a month. If you're using more than 800, if you're using 1,600, and you don't have a reason for it, that's when you look into
I was
it.
gonna say, you can ask Larry, I think he's back there somewhere. I drove him nuts for, what, a year to get the meter thing changed? To go to the digital one, because we thought it was...
Usually meters run slower when they're bad. So it's usually that you got something that's shorted out, or you got some...
Some people forget that in the hottest day, especially if they have children, or even if it's just you, let's say you decide to work out in the yard, they forget that if you open that door,
Oh, yeah,
10
it
times
sucks it out.
more than you normally would, your air conditioner is going to run more. And you not even realize it. Well, I didn't make it
Yes, because I turned into
Well,
my
it's
mom
running more
in my
because
closet.
of whatever. Sometimes you don't even realize what's happening.
I always wondered why they yelled that at me.
I tell
Is that my furnace?
Yeah, were you born in barn?
Like my furnace was running more. and I
If
had
you
to
will
take
allow
the
her to give us your
seats in
data,
my
we'll take a look and
garage,
see if
Is
we
that
can
wrong
find
with?
some
I
ideas.
don't.
No,
Is there anybody in the city that, a lot of towns, like, I think, that you can call some people do sit in your hammers.
Have you ever?
They'll come out, you have all of a sudden, because we have people here in town that, I'm telling you right now, somebody gives me a $1,400.
Oh, I got 1,200 last year.
Yeah, that was near though.
Yeah.
But giving me a $1,400,
I'd have a heart attack.
there ain't no way in, you know what? And there's people that's happening to you that are gone to work during the week, day. They're not even home. And I have this last.
What I would say to that is, some didn't get shut off before they went to work.
Someday the house will burn down.
We've had
Got
people
short.
that complain publicly, like on Facebook, that it comes to find out that their child left the space heater on in the basement. You don't hear about the resolution, you just hear that they complain about their $1,000 bill.
We've had
Oh,
a
then it's
couple of
interesting,
electricians
you know.
there checking it.
And we've had where we've gone and our crews have gone and checked the meter 2 or 3 times, tried to, offer them solutions, but when the usage is there, if it goes from 1,000 kilowatts to over 5,000 in a month, there's an issue inside that house. So
What about the new meters though? I read a lot of articles now. They say they're the greatest things and whatever. But there is been research done that some meters can run as much as 30%. Reading is 30% more than what you've actually used.
I'd like to see that article. If you could
Germany, the university, I think it's Germany.
send me the information, and we'll do some checking.
So I'm asking how, okay, you guys deal with them, how accurate are the new meters?
oh, they're very accurate. They're actually more accurate than the old ones.
The electronic meter, from an electric standpoint, the likelihood of a meter failure over a long period of time is less than 1%. From a water meter, it's fairly common over time, and I'm looking at the guys back there, it's fairly common over time. The older a water meter gets, the orifice that actually, it's a little spinning dial in there, and it slows down. And so what we hear more often than not, almost none really on electric usage has caused that to happen, or the meter itself has caused it to happen. More often than not, it's the water has caused, the water meter, when it comes to replace it to a new electronic, reading system, and somebody says, my bill used to be here and now it's here, and you go back and look at it and you say, well, guess what? The old meter should have been probably reading here on that usage standpoint. So
And we eventually have that.
that would be the first time in my 32 years in this business that I've heard electric meters running faster as they got older.
They were touched.
On the new ones that they put out, do they walk by with this electronic device, or do they read digital, or how do you do it?
It's a radio read. It's electronic
exactly like what
device.
the gas company uses also.
Yeah.
So they just combine this.
The gas company has a wand. Ours is in like a handheld with buttons and stuff on it. And they push it. The only signal it gets is the signal that meter that's in your home is sending to that thing.
So you can't get my neighbors.
I can't, it's not picking up your neighbors or anything else, because each individual meter has a code and a number, and it is assigned to that house. Whether you leave that house and go move someplace else, it's always going to be the same number to that meter.
That's the same
and it's
meter.
the same entrance meters.
Now, is our
very much
meter
like
still out on the pole in the alley, or did you move it up towards the house?
Wherever it was originally is where it's still at. Unless you,
It's very much like when you go to
a house.
you go to U of I, a sporting event, and you got those ticket takers, that when you've got that ticket in your hand, they got their phone or whatever, and it hits that thing, there's a digitized code in that ticket, there's a digitized serial mark in this thing. If it doesn't read, how many times you stood there and the guy goes, I can't figure it out. Well, it's because somehow that thing's got all gummed up. But that's the same technology as the ticket takers use at those sporting events.
Well, I say my water bill went up. It took me about a kid by to check my meter because of my water usage, and then all of a sudden, I cleaned 5 closets out. And it donated clothes and did like 50 extra loads of clothes so I could build it. That cost me.
Yeah.
Not only the gas to take it to different places and dress clothes and stuff, but yeah. Because but
You don't
I give the city-
think, but mine
they
starts
stop
very
and
slow.
50 loads
question
on
it.
my lot, my wife has got it easy then.
That was extra, that's 50, I'm not kidding, my dining room floor, because everything came out of the closet, and I separated it, and I washed it, and I folded it, and I put little bounce things in it, and took it around. So to give it away free, yeah, my water bill comes.
Ma'am, you had a question back there?
Just a couple things. I guess now that we don't have our journal, I really miss that, not being able to keep up with the council meetings. But we've heard for so many years, I don't know how many years it's been, that we've talked about going across the interstate. Going across the, I don't know if it's going to happen in my lifetime, I swear. It feels like forever we've talked about it. I want to know what the holdup is, if it's just a money thing. If it's a money thing, maybe it's never going to happen. We need to stop thinking about it or talking about it and sell the land and take the money and say it's not going to happen because we've talked about it forever.
It was my understanding that they just had difficulty figuring out how to pay for it. And so I figured out how to pay for it, and actually construction will start this summer.
Excellent. That's such good news. Such good news. And the other thing is, I do feel that I've been in this business for 40 years serving people. And you serve people the way you want to be served. Okay? The deal about the budget billing and not being late one time in the year, I feel you're being very rigid. I think that you're not doing a service to the people that live in this town, that have lived here for many, many years, that are good people. And I feel like you're being too rigid and not a service to the people that are paying for this town, that want to comply and are doing their best. And I think that you're being too hard and rigid on that. I've been late before. I've forgotten to pay the dang bill. Doesn't make us a bad person, doesn't mean I shouldn't get budget billing. Because I just feel you're too rigid with that.
I agree.
And I think it's very scary that I can only sign up in September. Well, I missed it, or October, I missed it again. Or I'm scared of the balloon at the end. I think it's very scary because my power bill, I open up with one eye because I'm scared to see what it looks like. But a balloon then, on top of that, I would hate it.
Mine actually went down.
Yeah, we have had credits. I don't like to tell people about the credits because there are people that have had to come in and pay $500, you know.
Is there a way to get a report mid-year to show how you're doing? I mean, if you're on a budget billing, is there a way to audit that to say, are you on track or
I
off
think
track?
we could. I was just going to say that this system, it's called Civic. It's a system that we use, and it's very rigid. I'm not saying we can't, you know, give you a 6-month progress. I agree with you and you that I've actually made a note to maybe evaluate the policy of, if we look at you and say you're past billing, and say she was late one time in the last 5 years, I think we should let her sign up. You know what I mean?
It's not like the guys didn't get paid
I'm
for
just
it.
using that as an example.
I mean, it cost me $20. Where's that?
I'm the guy from out of town, and I guess there's two things I'd say about that. Number one, the benefit of having those decisions being made locally is, all it takes is the council to look at a change in the policy, make a motion in a second to change that, and Sue's going to maybe throw a bottle of water at me here in a minute, but if y'all have some ideas for if you miss it by 3 minutes, or you have it once in every 5 years, or what I think Sue's looking at, just like I have to look at for example, Naperville, Illinois is one of my customers. If Naperville doesn't pay the bill, I'm on the phone, right? And so that's more than $50.
I just feel that's why we live in this small town.
And what I'm saying is,
Should be
what Sue and the staff are needing to do, and the council are needing to do, is they got to make it equitable for everybody. And so, just human nature is, if you give them a crack, some people are going to drive a freight train through it.
We have some guidelines.
But at the same time, if there's a provision in that budget billing that those of you that, again, I'll take your word for it that you were 3 minutes late. I'll take your word for it that you forgot the power bill. I do that too.
Yeah, they had my check, they just put it back in the mailbox and they
And then,
signed it.
and then,
And we pay extra when we haven't paid.
and then if.
So don't
then
forget
if we
that you
could-
got
if
20 or
we could
25
get
extra
drafting
bucks out of the deal.
a amendment provision to the budget billing provision that says you get one strike if this thing and that happens and that type of thing. And my guess is, for those of you that are regular bill payers that are you know, we all make stupid little mistakes from time to time. She's not looking at you.
illness.
What Sue has to deal with is, and of course I know nobody in Farmer City has this problem, but there are some people that don't pay their bills on time ever.
Then they don't get to do the budget billing.
But at the same time, she has to have a clear and concise policy
I
that
agree.
says,
I agree, you have to have a policy, but
That's
I'm
it.
saying I think the policy's too rigid. That's all.
That's not, that's a night course thing with your budget billing for the gas company. I'm not sure, I don't have it, but my neighbor does. Doesn't it come out and says, okay, she's paid, I don't know what, let's say $100 a month. And now she's got a credit of $200 and some, or if she's owing extra, it shows on her bill.
Yeah, that shows on the bill.
Yeah.
See, that's
That's
where
why I think
the
I don't have
problem
it,
with
so
our
I don't
system
know.
comes in, you know, 'cause our
Mine shows
system
my credit on mine.
only allows us to do so much. And the whole new system's 6 figures, so.
That shows on the.
Well, he says his-
It shows a credit, or a
What
debit.
shows, a night court?
But no,
No,
on
on
his
there.
city bill.
Oh, on the budget bill? Well, I'm gonna find out. I'm gonna talk to the staff myself and find out.
If he could get us that one, since he's retired, it would be nice to have a,
Just me.
oh, I'm sorry.
No, I just had a suggestion. I mean, for the NICOR budget billing, if you get to the end of the year, they make an adjustment up or down for the next year, so that you don't end up with the big balloon.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
So it's not a big deal.
Because I can roll it into the.
You just roll it into whatever the next year's payment's gonna be.
Because we do that with credits.
Right.
First of all, you could shoot me and they could drag me to the car and they could try to haul me home, but well, I guess the concept here is all of you all have braved the cold weather tonight to come talk, to learn more about what's going on, to talk about these issues, and it's really a matter of if there are some, if the people that care enough to do things and want to make it fair and just for the people that are paying attention to what's going on, to make sure that but to also recognize that, for example, and again, I'll play the devil's advocate on that one, is that if somebody is, you know, on a budget billing for say $150 a month, and their actual usage should have been $220 a month, now they're like another $1,000 in the hole. And if you then come back to them and say, oh, we're going to allow you to roll that forward, that $1,000 for another year, it ends up getting to the point where that person's power bill is so high based upon their actual usage, then invariably what happens is they come down to City Hall and say, I only used 800 kilowatt hours this month, and I got a $220 bill, and you got to go back and look at it. It says, yeah, but we're having to eat back in the $1,000 that should have been paid before. Again, I think that's one of those things for if there's consideration and approval of the council to do those things. First of all, Sue's got to manage it so that she can make sure a system works correctly, so that she can keep track of that. And the second thing is so that it's equitable to everybody in the system.
That's the reason budget billing.
Homeowners, they try to collect the $1,000 from the homeowner.
and when you get bashed on Facebook later tonight or tomorrow, you need to try to tell those people that they shouldn't.
You had a question.
Yeah, I'm happy with budget billing. We've had it for I don't know how long, but it's good. And it shows our balance, our credit every month. how much is on there.
We have a pool, and our highest bill is September 10th usually, from August, when we have a
But
hot
it's not
summer.
that bad.
But ours is not that bad.
But
I'm not complaining.
I
about it at all.
think individually in town, like she said, Brenda, you need to look at individual people's track records. Because you got illnesses, you got hospitals, you got deaths, you got a lot of stuff, and even though your envelope says, which I
Yeah,
says
the whole bill.
if you don't get our bill, that's not our problem, you still, I understand that, but you know people's gonna play that too. Because I'm always saying,
But maybe
okay,
if
we got
you-
the power bill yet, let's
If you
get
let those
paid.
people have budget billing, then maybe they won't be late, you know, they won't.
Yeah, I mean, 2 strikes, but you gotta look at each individual track record.
Right, right, so you know what I mean?
Sometimes you're just totally at the end of your, you know, you
Try
got
to estimate that.
your job, you work, the kids, school, whatever
And
the
the
problem.
website wasn't working last time either when I tried, is that, will that be?
Yeah, we're in the process of getting a new website. It should work now. Sometimes it's slow loading because what we're doing is we're creating a new one. But
that's
what
where a lot of
we've done
people
is
leave
you can
to
still
pay the
go to
bill.
the old one and it will forward to the new one, but that might take a few minutes.
Yeah, mine wasn't
It
working
should
at
be
all last
working.
time.
Clear your browser history and then it should work, so.
Is there an automatic debit that we can take advantage of and never be
No,
late?
We don't have that right now. The only thing we have is you don't pay online on a credit card. But no,
Is there, maybe that's a possibility.
Especially if you're on the.
Then you're not gonna be late.
That's probably a 5-figure component to add to our financial system.
Something.
Because I would love to be able to pay our bill, to pay the city's bills automatically as well, you know, because we read a lot of checks. But it's
A lot of bank accounts, you can set up automatic
I was gonna say,
payments.
yeah.
So if
Oh,
you get on,
I know, but you still gotta hit the numbers and you still gotta get there on time.
Yeah.
So, you
But it'd
know,
be good.
No, I know, because I do automatic debit for a lot
I
of
mean,
stuff.
my health insurance comes out first of the month, and by golly, if that's not there, I'm not gonna have health insurance.
Right.
But if
So I
we
make sure that
ever find
account's
the money
full.
to update the system, and not the 6-figure, but
No.
like even add a component to do the accounts payable, that may be part of that.
It'd be nice if we could have something like that.
but I will tell you, I know that, I mean, at the end of the day, what the budget billing and the flexible programs are designed to give people options. And what the city and Sue has to think about is, and again, I'm looking at 4 people who probably off the top of their head could say, I can tell you 5, 6, 7 people that are just, they don't pay their bills on time and it's a struggle to get their bills paid any month. And again, that's just real life. And so, but what the city has to look at is, and I look at this from my nonprofit utility, just like you're looking at yours, is if those people don't pay, if they still continue to take the service and they don't pay their bills, guess where that money comes from? All of you. And so it's just a matter of, it's a self-management thing. You're in this city, and I think that to me, I think the thing that's cool and refreshing about this is, as Mike said, you know, if you had a question about this with NICOR, my guess is that the manager of NICOR and the supplier there would be sitting there talking about trying to make those options and seeing what flexibility we can put in there.
I hear me, A part of it is fine. No problem with it whatsoever. I want Sue to know that I'm not taking on intentionally. As far as the light bill and everything goes, we've been in conversations around 30 years now. Never had a complaint with the light bill. So, you know, I mean, we gotta pay for it. And if I felt we give in a 1900 square foot house with a 2-car garage, 3-car garage, I heat your garage, our light bill runs out of light, water, and sewer, runs us about, well, probably this month it'll be around 300, which I that. But normally, it runs 100.
My guess is she's happy to heat the garage so that you're out there messing around in the garage.
I wasn't picking on you.
It's okay, I mean, I'll look into it. I made a note to look into it.
But I was on the board and I went through all this crap and it just gets old and it keeps happening, the same thing. And part of that's because you got the same people. And that's not going to change. Hopefully it will change this time.
Well, it's funny you said that because I actually, when I was talking to the bond, we'll be having a meeting Monday, talking about the bond issue. And I was talking to the bond council, and I said, we need to make sure that when we're gone, you know, me, staff, anybody, that things are in place, that they understand what they're supposed to do financially to pay pay these bonds, because the bonds are for 25 years. So, you know, I agree that, I think about that, you know, if we say we're going to do something, we need to make sure that things are in place that they're.
The city has lost a key person here just lately in the office.
I'm sorry?
The city has lost a key person in the office here.
Sandy.
You're gonna miss her here. The whole attitude when you go into that office has changed. You got a bunch of sourpusses up there now. They don't change. That's right. You hear about it. You're gonna have to get rid of some of them.
That's true.
That's true. I'm not fooling with you. They know who they are. And, you know, you go in there, at least you can get a smile if you're paying a $500 water bill.
Some of the people in council like
You
that
are paying
too.
their stuff.
She gets kind of stirred up when I get to talking, but, you know, as far as the city goes, I like Farmers City, I moved down here 30 years ago, I've been involved in it, I'm still involved. Thought about running for the board again, my heart's not gonna let me. I had to bear a golf on the other.
Well, your heart lets you run, man.
Well, I appreciate you guys coming out on such a cold, snowy night. I have the budget billing info. Obviously, like I said, right now, it's set for September, October, but if you're interested in reading, I have these. Please take some light bulbs. You know what?
Please take the
Take as many as you want.
And they really do make a difference.
It doesn't, it may not sound like a lot, but if you take this light bulb and put it, replace it with a 60 watt, or from a 60 watt to a 100 watt, this takes 9 watts. You talk about making a staggering difference in your power bill, and what she's saying is,